Welcome back.
To Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm still Robert Winters.
And he's still
I'm Jesse Kanson-Benanav.
Right.
hanging on for the last segment.
That's right.
Why not?
So we spent much of the last half hour discussing what was really in my opinion, was sort of like the only item on the agenda of the city council meeting last night. There were other things, but this was such a huge thing. This was the inclusionary housing study, which will one day lead to changes in the inclusionary zoning ordinance once everything gets kind of hashed out. There'll probably be a big discussion through the summer into the fall, I imagine. I'm trying to think if there was any other items about that we didn't really touch upon. I'll say one thing here. As I was just sort of looking at some scratch notes that I had made was in the report. They did very explicitly include a little bullet point here. It says, and if you're going to change the requirements for inclusionary, affordable. I've never been comfortable with that word affordable.
Yeah, what's affordable?
It's pretty vague, actually.
For whom,
Yeah.
right? But inclusionary units is that they said it said considering the impacts of the changes to the inclusionary housing provisions on the competitiveness of residential versus commercial development and land uses.
Yeah.
So what?
Meaning if you start making the mandate too strict, you do tip the equilibrium to some degree, and arguments about we could do a lot better building lab space if that's a permissible use, or office buildings or whatever if that's a permissible use. So it'll be interesting to see whether there's also a kind of a cousin move along the way here to try and mandate all housing in some zones as a way of saying, I'm sorry, you're going to have to do this. Right? So that's one way to handle it, I suppose, is take away choice.
You mean in some of the existing commercial zones?
Yeah, and I think that'll get a lot of pushback. I think if that does it, you
can't imagine the business community being thrilled
to
about
take
that.
away that.
They're not going to want that at all.
Right.
People don't like takeaways.
No.
You get used to something, you want it to stay.
I think one good thing about these recommendations, there's a lot of potentially good things, but they do suggest that whatever is adopted, City Council readdress it, re-examine it. I think in 5 years, is that what they said?
5.
But they set a timeline saying whatever you do, make sure you look at it, see what the impact is, and then make any changes that are necessary.
That sounds pretty wise, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, actually, it's kind of similar to the argument about the change in the linkage requirements, which was set some years ago, but then they didn't really go back and revise it for a long time.
Yeah.
And then they ended up, tripling or quadrupling it or something?
But if 1% each year or something.
Yeah. Well, they're going to do sort of they made a change, and now there'll be a few marginal increases, but then eventually after 3 years, they'll have to take a good hard look at it again.
Right.
One thing I want to say before we talk about some other things is that it sort of occurs to me, and I think I may have said this at one of those Envision Cambridge workshops, which is that the degree to which we have to do these things is almost a measure of the fact that we begin from a point of failure.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, in an ideal world, or even in the years gone by, yes, there was rent control, sure, in Cambridge, but many of us, when you came here, if you wanted an affordable place to live, you went and looked for an affordable apartment, and you probably were able to find it somewhere. It just existed. The fact that we're having to do things like this, which are kind of strict and a little bit contrived here and there, is really almost an acknowledgement of the fact that just doesn't seem to work.
Right.
And I do sometimes wonder, I said, is that a permanent state? Is that, will there be a day 30 years from now when people say, oh, I can't believe when we were looking back around 2016 that we were trying to require the moon from everybody that built anything here, because my gosh, now everybody's paying more or less the same okay rents now.
Right.
I mean, will there come a day, or is that just a complete impossibility?
I mean, I don't know. I think you're right that we do start from a place of failure, and I think it's not just failure in Cambridge. In fact, Cambridge may have done it better than a lot of other places, but throughout the United States, for about 100 years, we've had an extremely exclusionary policy where large lot suburban zones and federal dollars are directed towards them to help house, middle class, upper middle class,
Right.
mostly white people. The cities were disinvested
That's
and
right.
dilapidated. And we now have a point.
And money was spent on roads.
Exactly,
cars,
roads and cars.
Not
To
public
move people further
transportation.
and further out.
Exactly. We
Right.
got social isolation,
Right.
exclusion, environmental
Right.
degradation. All of this is
And now it's
really
all changed.
federal
Everyone wants to
policy.
move to the cities
and everyone
now.
wants to
Yeah.
move back, which has a lot of great potential.
Except-
Social integration, sustainability, but at the same time, right, if we're not doing it
Is
correctly.
it really social integration? Because a lot of people are now living out in
Well, it has the potential.
It
You're
has
right.
potential,
I think
but-
the problem is we haven't addressed
Exactly.
the 100 years of exclusion, and I think this is the starting place of failure that Robert is
Yeah,
referring to.
yeah.
Yes.
I see a lot of potential in the new focus on
Yeah.
urbanism in the United States.
I do too.
And I think if we
Walking,
can create
biking,
exactly,
yes, yeah.
we can create opportunities for
Right.
people of all income levels to
Right.
live in the cities, and I think that it requires
Mm-hmm.
substantially greater density of housing in the urban core, real investment in public transportation, complete streets, things like
Mm-hmm. Right.
that. I think we can get there. We're not there yet, and I do fear for how that will look in the coming
I think it was
decades.
just yesterday, they had this study that came out, which seemed to me obvious, that people of low income, if they live in the cities, are going to live longer than if they live out. Well, yeah, but now that sort of is what you're saying. In
Yeah.
a way, there's just more opportunities or more abilities to live your life.
I mean, I grew up in New York City, and New York, and you were, Minnesota, right?
Yeah,
Minnesota.
all of my parents are New Yorkers.
All right. Yeah. But in New York, the pattern is that whether you built the housing and then the transportation to go with it, oftentimes the transportation resources were built prior to the housing, and the
Yeah.
housing followed it.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you allowed an expansion of public transit. Subway lines in New York City grow out, 20
Yeah.
miles in every
Oh, yeah.
direction.
Yeah.
And apartment buildings, whole towns filled with apartment buildings
Yeah.
were certainly.
Co-op city.
Co-op
Yeah.
City was one of them, and that did provide tremendous
That's
amounts
still
of
there, did they not?
affordability.
Still there.
Still there,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Is it rental?
It's co-op.
I think it's called co-op.
That's
Oh,
what-
it so
that's
literally
the
is a
name.
co-op.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I never knew
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So,
Of course.
so New York City, I mean, I don't know what it is now. I think everything is probably getting unaffordable, but
Yeah.
I still hear some places, people where I grew up in Whitestone, Flushing area, who's still finding affordable apartments. Because New York City allowed it. You didn't have the kind of suburban little fiefdoms that sort of blocked it. We're not going to let that subway line through here.
Well, that's
Like-
true, because it was always had a public transit. I mean,
Yeah.
the
I mean-
car wasn't king.
Wasn't king.
Yeah, but the Red Line was supposed to be
Yeah.
expanded through
Yeah.
Lexington,
Yeah.
through
Yeah,
Arlington,
that's true.
Lexington, out to Route 128, which probably would have led to at least a little bit more of an urban.
Well, getting to
touch to
Alewife was a big accomplishment, wasn't it? When I
Yeah,
moved here, it
even
didn't
doing
even
that,
go
yeah.
there. It
Yeah.
ended at Harvard Square,
Right,
didn't it?
right, yeah.
Yeah.
1984, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't.
Extended.
Again, speaking of failure, the fact that we don't seem to have the wherewithal to get our transit infrastructure readied and improved and fixed for our future.
Like light rail.
Makes
Yeah.
it so much harder to even talk about what's
Yeah.
the right way to actually do sort of a housing plan, not just for Cambridge. I mean, it's a shame that we all have to do this town by town.
Right, right.
But it's also part of New England tradition that
Local control.
a lot of local control. But anyway, we'll see how it all shakes out. But it was, as I said earlier, that was the only item on the Cambridge City
Yeah,
Council
yeah,
meeting.
that's the
Really,
big one.
last
Well,
night.
the cannabis thing keeps coming up.
Well,
And
that's actually in the queue for the council doesn't meet next Monday because
Right.
it's Patriots Day, but the
Right.
following Monday is when that will be ordained. There's no question about it.
Is that the new zoning to allow for a dispensary?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
but even
there's-
to the one that's been designated, there's still issues.
one small legal opinion that's due that
Right.
probably won't say anything particularly controversial to say that if you want to really just zone one little block,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
just to allow this use here, is that illegal spot
Spot zoning,
zoning?
sure.
And
Yeah.
I have no idea about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Councilor Carlone says, well, I seem to remember last year there was another major rezoning for one block for the Mass and Main
Right.
project. He didn't
Right.
say that explicitly.
Yeah.
But, so in other words, some people seem to be perfectly okay with zoning one block
Yeah.
and change in purpose.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll see how that goes. But I mean, it's a change in use, which is
Right.
different than
Right.
in Central Square, you already had the capacity to allow housing and commercial and office use. So it was just a change in how much.
Right.
That's all.
Right.
Where is it exactly supposed to be?
It's
That-
basically, I think, at a corner of, I hate to sound, it starts to really sound like spot zoning. You say,
Yeah.
oh yeah, the new zone, that's at the corner of Mass
Yeah.
Ave and Dana Street.
So that is near,
Or
'cause
Ellery
in public
Street.
comment that came up from
I
a
think
couple
it's like-
people about
it's
it being near the high school.
Like Cannondale Bike.
But apparently
Yeah.
it's
Bike shop. Yeah.
Right.
it's within the whatever legal requirements
from the
to
school.
be.
Someone
yeah.
pointed out that if you want to put a strict rule that you can't be within X feet of a school, you pretty much preclude most of
Mostly,
Cambridge
yeah,
because
sure.
there's some form
But
of
they're
rule.
but they are within the right. And also, you can't just walk in there, right?
Right,
I mean, there's
no.
going to be some.
I mean, as it is now, you need a prescription, you need an
Right.
ID from a doctor.
Right.
My cynical side says there's going to be a nice little cottage industry and a few people who say, oh, you want me to write you a prescription? Sure, that'll be $100. There you go.
I think that has popped up to some degree already.
Well, there's
Yeah.
supposed to be a ballot in November on
Right, for
legalizing
full
the whole thing,
legalization.
which is a
Yeah.
whole other
Yeah.
issue I don't want to
And
get into.
people
I'm
say,
not
well,
sure about
these
that.
are totally separate, medical marijuana.
We haven't even
and-
done this yet. Why can't they just do this first and see how it goes?
Well,
before
I
they-
mean, I was being the cynic that I am. I just assumed, well, if you get your foot in the door with the medical marijuana, and then the full legalization comes out, but then you're sort of already you're in like Flint. You've got the
Right.
location, you've got
got
some
the-
clientele. People say,
Yeah,
oh, that's
well,
where you go,
I don't know.
and maybe they're just getting their foot in the door. But the people say otherwise, and I'm going to trust.
I think that's what they did do in Colorado. If you were already a medical
You could also
dispensary,
sell it,
you
really?
then got some sort of special
Yeah.
privilege to when they legalized it.
Yeah.
But I'm not an expert on that.
I think more the point is if you were smoking out in public, they couldn't arrest you. Isn't that more the point on legalizing it?
Here they could, I believe.
Even if it's legal?
Oh yeah.
No, I mean, in Colorado, you can't go on the street and
no,
just smoke?
No.
Even
Oh,
though
I
it's
don't.
legal? But it's legal. It's not, I'm not,
Well, we can't smoke it. We can't smoke cigarettes in parks in Cambridge, for instance. So they can. I believe what's
okay.
included in
All right.
the Massachusetts one would
Yeah.
allow municipalities to ban it outside.
Do you know if anybody
Alright.
has actually done any polling yet to see what the chances of that passing are?
Well, I've seen it, and I don't know that I've seen any polling done in 2016, but I know there was at least 3 or 4 polls in 2015 that showed a majority in every case of Massachusetts voters would support legalization.
really?
Right.
Majority maybe being 54%, but that's enough to pass.
Right,
That's
so I imagine there's
interesting.
going to be a fair amount of money sunk into that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what the other ballot questions are.
What
this
is
year, but-
what is interesting is that I've read that some of the actual, so going back to the earlier point, some of the medical marijuana dispensaries or the industry, the medical industry is opposing the full-out legalization because they think I guess it would hurt their business or something. I don't quite know what their argument is, but one of the main
Why do I need
opponents-
to go to the dispensary? I can just go to Joey down
Exactly,
the street.
exactly.
Right.
Because it might be cheaper if it's not
Yeah.
coming through a doctor. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
interesting. I have no idea what it even
They want to
costs.
maintain the cartel.
Right, exactly.
Right. Well, I mean, a lot of times anything that's licensed works that way. Like
Is there
tattoo
any
camp
working
licenses, et cetera.
dispensary open now anywhere in the state?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah.
There's one in Salem.
Brockton.
Brockton.
Oh,
I
okay.
heard Brookline.
Brookline
had
is
one.
opening.
Brookline has one?
Yeah, or is coming, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, some of the testimony made it sound as though the only way you would have access is you have to go from here to
Travel.
the moon.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was true. But,
Yeah, but
you
if
know,
you have to go to Salem, I mean, people are complaining about
It's
dropping
not-
off prescription medications
you
at
don't- you don't have to
the,
go
at
to
the
Salem,
police
but the-
office.
Yeah.
So they're
Right.
going to complain about everything.
Anyway, so that was interesting. So we thought we might actually touch on a few other things, not sort of super.
Yeah.
Actually, let's do one more political thing,
Yeah.
because today is the day of a special.
Oh, right. You still have to, if
primary
you're watching this
election.
show and you live where? I mean, well,
I
where
forget
I
where
live,
it was, but
Cambridgeport and
if
parts
you're-
of Riverside.
Mostly, exactly.
Yeah.
It's
If
mostly
your
it.
state senator was Mr.
Andrew-
Petrocelli,
Exactly.
right?
You can go and vote.
Then that
Right.
seat is it's not actually being filled today because this is just the primary.
Right.
The Democratic.
That's right.
And I don't know if
There's no Republican.
There's no
Because there's
Republican.
there was one person, but he was unopposed. Did he not even file the papers?
I don't think he filed.
All right, so
Yeah.
basically,
There's no Republican primary.
classic Massachusetts election. There's 7 Democrats running in what might be. I hope it's
Yeah.
a higher turnout, but oftentimes a
Yeah.
low turnout primary. and then a general election that's thoroughly meaningless.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we really, talk about things we don't do well.
Yeah.
We
But
don't-
you have
we
an
don't
hour and
encourage.
3/4 to get to the point.
Right, so that's it. So there are 7
Yes.
candidates,
Yeah.
and just to rattle them off.
Yeah.
And maybe you've heard a word or two about some of these folks, but
definitely.
there's and I may have some of the towns wrong, but this is what I
Well, I've
have.
got
And
some
I
here,
posted
yeah.
a while ago. Jay Livingstone, who's the current state rep
Yep.
Right.
in one of our districts in Cambridge, but he lives in Beacon Hill. His district crosses over. Remember, state senate districts are essentially 4 times the size of the
See,
state
that
rep
I didn't
districts
realize. So
because
that's
there are 40
really-
state senators, 160 state
Ah,
reps.
makes sense.
And that's the
Okay.
ratio, 4-to-1. There's Lydia Edwards from East Boston, Dan Rizzo from Revere, Diane Huang from East Boston,
So you have both of them from East Boston.
They are
That's
both,
interesting.
yeah.
And you
Yeah.
know that for sure.
Yep.
Oh, that is
Joseph
interesting.
Boncourt from, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Winthrop.
Well, he's a member
Steve
of the,
Morabito from Revere, same as
Revere,
Dan
right.
Rizzo, and Paul Rogers from East Boston.
Right, so there's three from East
again,
Boston.
my political cynicism immediately looks and says, oh, let's see, 3 from East Boston, they'll
Right.
split the vote so somebody else will get it. But I've actually heard, my intuitive view of this, when I first saw the names of the candidates and listened to them, I said, okay, these are the top 3. And I just said, okay, Livingstone, because he's already kind
Yeah.
of got
Yep.
he's got an anchor here in Cambridge, and he's known, and he's got a bit of a machine already. Lydia Edwards, who's a really attractive candidate, even though she doesn't have a machine in play. Well, maybe she has a little bit, but she's
She's
never.
got lots of
She's got a
volunteers.
good
She's
get out the
got-
vote effort.
And
She
her,
got-
her signs are everywhere.
Everywhere. She got
Everywhere.
big-
Well,
And
signs don't
Livingstone.
vote.
Besides the vote.
True. Oh, I like that.
And I don't
Right.
know that Boston Globe endorsements carry the weight that they
Oh, that's
once
right.
did,
I
but
forgot
she
they
got,
She was
endorsed
endorsed,
her.
yeah.
Right.
right.
I
I
forgot
think
that.
she's a very
Yes.
compelling candidate.
She's definitely going somewhere.
right. And then I figured
Not
Dan
that.
Rizzo, because
He's the Revere
established.
guy.
Yeah.
And he's Revere. He may have this fellow Steve Morabito as well from Revere, but I think Rizzo's a big one. It was an interesting thing, I think, in Mass Inc., or maybe it was Michael Jonas was writing about it, where there was one of these last-second attacks
Yeah.
on Dan Rizzo, where
yeah.
they basically
yeah.
put 2 photos of him with Charlie Baker and some Republicans and someone else. Basically came right out and said, oh, he's endorsed Republican candidates. Listen, you're running for the Democratic primary. He said,
Right.
see, Rizzo, he's the guy that... Apparently, he's denied it. He said it's never really happened.
It was an interesting
Dirty politics.
It was. It's disappointing that politics at this level gets so dirty. The flyer showed him with 2 photographs. One of him with Scott Brown and John McCain. Another photograph of him with Mitt Romney.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was the Mass Values PAC, which
Okay.
is, I believe, mostly a pro-labor,
Right.
left-leaning political action committee that paid for it.
Now, Chris, every candidate will be able to sort of say, "Oh, well, that wasn't me. It was the PAC, right?"
Were they supporting someone else,
You
or were
know,
they just?
they usually are, but
This
it's
was
not
just an
unclear.
attack on
Yeah.
him.
I've seen attacks on Jay Livingstone
Oh, yes.
as well.
Yes.
I saw some images of a text message from, I have to remember, one of the opponents. I don't want to say who because I don't want to
Yeah.
get it wrong, but a campaign manager saying, do you support men using the bathroom with little girls?
Right,
And
right. I think I
really
saw
hitting
that.
Jay, who
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like Jay a lot, and I'm fortunate to know him. He's a great progressive representative, but he was supportive of the bathroom bill, the so-called
Right.
bathroom bill,
Right.
the trans equality bill,
Right.
which would allow folks to use their
That
bathroom
become a
of their
different
identified
gender.
gender,
Right.
and so that was a real dirty attack on Jay. I
Yes.
thought.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
sent a letter out to. I got one explaining that. Jay did.
Yeah, I think one interesting dynamic in this race is, you were saying, oh, well, there's multiple East Boston candidates, maybe that will split. I think what might split votes more is the sort of progressive versus conservative
Right, old
Democrat,
school
because
type
you
yeah,
have
yeah.
Jay Livingstone, Lydia Edwards, Diane Huang, and there's a 4th one who I don't
Paul
know
Rogers,
as well. Who all are sort of identified.
Joseph Boncourt.
I don't know who the 4th one is, but they're all identified as strong progressives. I know
Okay.
Diane Wang, for instance,
Oh,
has
yeah.
State Senator Cheng Diaz supporting her.
Right, she has a lot
They
of
all have lots
support.
of unions behind
Yeah,
them, and so there's concern among the progressives in the district that
They'll split it.
they'll
That's
split,
good. Yeah.
and it'll help Dan Rizzo, who, whether he has supported Republicans or not in the past, is definitely more identified as a conservative Democrat.
When he spoke at the event here at the Central Square Library, I mean, he was pretty clearly kind of more of a law and order kind of classic law and order candidate, which I think I imagine where he's coming out of probably resonates with a lot of the people who he knows up there.
Yeah, he does want to give ICE, the Immigration Customs Enforcement, the ability to, or local police, the ability to talk to people at traffic stops about their immigration status and report that to ICE, which is a controversial position.
Sure. You know, not to sound like the ultimate election method nerd, but I've been saying it for years. Whenever they do these vacancy refills, they really, and again, I don't want to really get too down on the state legislature, but in certain respects, they are the most static body I've ever seen. The fact of this is that these things, you've got 7 Democrats fighting each other over for a primary, followed by a May 10th general election that's thoroughly meaningless.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? To me, there's so many simple ways in which you don't have to do this for all elections, but though I would actually recommend for all elections, but why not have more of an open primary where all these candidates can run in the primary, and though this isn't ideal, because I mean, maybe ideal would be more of like ranked ballots, but even if you don't want to go for ranked ballots, you could do something like, okay, how about the top 2 finishers then go head to head?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how they do it in the Boston mayoral race.
Yeah.
Right? So you can have 2 Democrats going against each other in the final, right?
In California, they do it at every level, I believe.
At every level?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why in this progressive Massachusetts, why our state legislature can't figure out that maybe this is a problem? Yeah. I mean, one might argue, well, maybe they're trying to protect something that works for them. Right. And, I got elected under the current system, no matter how bad it sucks, right? Yeah. So why would I change, right? Yeah. I mean, that's about as cynical as I can go on this, but there's so many better ways to do this. Right. It's a ridiculous thing. And honestly, when I see things in relatively low voter turnouts, I hear somebody wants to, for example, it was a little controversial. Leland Chung is challenging Pat Jalen, right?
Yep. Yeah, I didn't know that.
For state Senate seat, right?
He was disavowed of something.
Yeah, so apparently there was some mass Democratic something or other where, I don't know whether you get to be a delegate to something, and there was like an active campaign against Leland because how dare you run against another Democrat because a good solid progressive. And I thought, well, this is sort of part of what you do, right?
Yeah, but it's part of what he does, it seems.
Well, maybe so, but I remember.
Did he run for lieutenant governor?
But listen, I remember when Marjorie Decker was going to challenge Paul DeMarcus.
Oh, yeah.
And he was same story then. He was a good guy. He was one of us. And Marjorie said, no, I want to run for that state rep seat as well. And she immediately got kind of torn to shreds by people. So I wrote her a check. Yeah. I said, you got a right to run against anybody you want.
Yeah, I mean, this is our democracy, right? And we really, it functions on elections and people opposing each other. And I even did read a quote from Senator Jalen saying this is everyone's right to run in a democracy.
She was basically saying this wasn't a good idea. Yeah.
Just play fair.
Just play fair.
May the best man or woman win, right?
Yeah. So. That will be an interesting race to watch.
Definitely. So a few other things, just more in the nature of announcements. Judy, you said you were actually doing some volunteer for the
Well, I thought I would, although I have to say I emailed them today because I'm thinking, I wonder if they know how old I am. Because it just seemed to me that all of us, I have to wear a T-shirt, and I've gone to events in the past. I said, I'm not a millennial because I couldn't make the volunteer meeting. They had 2 sessions on Saturday, and then I got all the materials and they had these group things and finding this and that. I said, oh my God, I'm glad I didn't make it, but. Anyway, so who knows? But yeah, I'm going to volunteer for. They're having Digital Day next week at the MIT meeting. They're having lots of things, but
I actually had a lot of this.
Pick up this.
I had all this queued up on a website, but we said, what the hell? Let's just be human today.
You can find these at the library or
online. You just can
or online.
Cambridge
in fact,
Science
and there's an app that I actually downloaded called Guidebook, which you can put in these things, and that just shows up.
And it's day by day.
I can do it. Anybody.
It's always fun. And one tradition that they've done, one of my favorite ones. I ever saw here at the Cambridge Science Festival was at the very first one.
Was that the Friday night thing?
It's a Friday night
Yeah,
thing.
that's the
It's
15th.
called,
That's this week.
so this Friday,
Yeah.
so April 15th.
Right, I can
have to
get it.
write down the time here. I think it's like 6:30 to
I'll
8:30 or
find
something
it
like
right
that.
here, yeah.
But it's called Big Ideas for Busy People.
Right.
And I went to this maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it was like some of the top physicists, top people, world-renowned characters. They give 5 minutes to explain the field.
Wow.
And then there's at the end, there's a big loud
Yeah.
gong goes off. And I thought, well, how is this possibly going to work? How is
It
Alan?
does cost money,
It does $10.
$10. Get your ticket at Big Ideas CSF 2016 at Eventbrite. But if you
If you Google it, you'll find
Google
everything doing this
And it's at the First Parish Church.
in Harvard Square.
The governor will be there.
Yeah,
Really?
Charlie Baker's
It might even be
actually
sold out.
doing
It's
one.
7:30 to 9:30.
Yeah, it may have, hopefully they're actually
Yeah,
have
'cause that's
some
not a
sort of
huge
way of
place.
recording
Yeah.
it. But it was a great thing. Alan Guthrie's, one of the prime inventor of the inflationary theory of
Oh,
the universe.
I went to this
In 5
last
minutes,
year,
he
I think.
basically explained
Oh,
the
wow.
inflationary,
That's
and he
amazing.
did it, and it was great.
It made sense?
Yeah, it made sense.
Was this
and-
last year?
No, when Alan Guthrie was maybe 4 or 5 years
Okay,
ago.
I think I went last year
they've
because it
done it
said
every
there's a
year.
special showcase fund.
Yeah.
I remember some dance engineering.
I've gone
type
to maybe
science.
2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would get to this one. It'd be nice if I could. I'll probably be still working on my taxes.
I just did mine on Saturday. It was
Yeah.
not good.
I'm all done.
Yeah.
I'm all
But
done.
anyway, that's happening, and
And then Saturday is at the library, the
Cambridge-
Robot Zoo.
that's
Yeah,
the
noon to-
Science Carnival in Robot Zoo
It's right,
up at CRLS.
Noon to 4. Yeah,
Yeah, and I went to that
indoors,
last
the
year, and
field
that
house,
was
and also.
hysterical.
Oh, it's amazing.
They
Look
were-
at all these places that are
They
going to be.
were, they were also making available
And that's free.
worm cookies.
Yeah.
I didn't eat them.
Actual
thank you.
worms?
Made from worms.
I'm a vegetarian, so I can't
I
eat
ain't
that.
doing
Oh, all right. Okay.
Yeah, and actually one other thing I'll just mention here,
Yeah.
just because it also happens to be my place of work, is that there are events every day.
10 days. 10
Yeah,
days of events.
I think this Thursday night.
Over 100. They said about 180 events.
Yeah, but next Thursday night they're
It
playing.
was in my worksheet for the
Right.
volunteers.
So
No, we're not.
another one here was where I work at MIT. So again, if I was a better person, we'd put this
Oh,
online.
yes,
but,
they're looking for volunteers for
but
that.
this is pretty cool. This is just
Yeah.
open house at MIT. So,
Yes.
That's cool.
I mean, those of us who work there, we walk down any corridor in any building any day, and it's like walking through a carnival.
Yeah.
Where science is happening, you can't miss it,
You're
right?
right. That's the day before the last day of the festival. That's
Right.
wonderful.
So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
anyway, that's on next Saturday, April 23rd, 10 to 3. And if you want to just sort of walk into pretty much anywhere, there's a... Anyway, just Google it around. You'll find it's very easy
Cambridge
to get
Science
there.
Festival,
And
yeah.
I think
Pick up
you
a
definitely
booklet
want to
or
go.
go online, and lots of things and it's separated. If you look at the booklet or online, you can. Is it for teens, adults, families, all of the so you can.
Yeah,
really
so anyway, it's a great
zone
thing.
out.
So anyway, go to the Cambridge Science
Yes.
Festival. So anyway, until next week, this has been
Oh, it's over?
Cambridge Inside Out.
Good night.